If you'd asked me at the start of the semester which of my classmates would end up in my apartment at 10:30 p.m. asking to cram together, I would not have guessed Josh Turner. Josh wasn't the guy you expected to need help with anything. He was one of those naturally confident types. Varsity soccer, always walking through campus with his headphones on, effortlessly cool in that way I never was. We were in the same psych class, but we hadn't said more than 10 words to each other since week 1. So when he texted out of nowhere that night, asking if I was still up and wanted to go over some lecture slides before tomorrow's quiz, I actually double-checked the name. Me. Yeah, I'm up. You sure you meant to text me? Josh. Yeah, you seem like you actually pay attention in class. I could use the help. It was the most backhanded compliment I'd ever gotten, but also the closest he'd come to acknowledging my existence. So I said sure. 15 minutes later, he was knocking on my door. I didn't know what I expected, but it wasn't this. He looked flustered. He had on this worn gray hoodie and black joggers that clung to his thighs in a way that was extremely distracting, and he kept tugging at the sleeves like he didn't know what to do with his hands. Not exactly the usual cocky Josh I'd seen around campus. Hey, he said, stepping inside like it wasn't the first time he'd ever been in my apartment. Hope it's cool I came this late. Yeah, I said, shutting the door behind him. Wasn't doing anything important. He dropped his bag on the floor and looked around. Nice place, kinda cozy. Kind of a mess, I muttered, pushing a hoodie off the couch. Sorry. Josh gave me a lopsided grin and flopped down, his thigh brushing mine for a second too long when I sat beside him. So, I said, pulling up the lecture slides on my laptop. You're behind? Josh nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. Kinda zoned out all week. Coach has us doing 2-a-days for some reason. My brain's fried. I tried to focus. I really did. But sitting this close to him, in the dim lamplight of my living room, his cologne, faint but definitely there, made it hard to remember what Pavlov's dogs were supposed to teach us. Still, I did my best. For like 20 minutes. Then he leaned in closer. Not subtly, not casually. Just, suddenly, he was right there, peering over my shoulder like he couldn't see the screen from his side, even though he definitely could. You smell good, he said. I froze. What? Josh looked at me, expression unreadable. I said you smell good. Like clean laundry or something. Kinda nice. I stared at him. He didn't move away. You okay? I asked. Voice quieter than I intended. He held my gaze, and for a moment he didn't say anything. Then, softly, he said, I didn't really come over to study. My stomach flipped. No? Josh shook his head slowly. I mean, yeah, I suck at psych. But I didn't pick you just because you're smart. He reached over, brushed a piece of lint off my shirt like it was the most normal thing in the world. I've seen you around, he said. You always look like you've got everything figured out. I let out a short laugh. I really don't, he smiled. Still, I like that about you. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. Are you messing with me? His expression changed, went softer, almost shy. No, he said. I don't really know what I'm doing. But I know I didn't come here just for flashcards. There was a pause. Heavy. Full. Then he added, Can I kiss you? And that was the moment everything changed. Can I kiss you? Those 5 words echoed in my head, louder than they had any right to be. The room was dead quiet, like even the air had paused to hear what I'd say next. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Josh Turner, the guy who barely knew my name last month, who usually strutted across campus with that too cool smirk and a soccer ball under one arm, was now sitting on my couch, knees turned toward me, face open and a little uncertain. And he was asking. Not assuming, not leaning in without warning, just asking. I swallowed. Yeah. The second the word left my mouth, something shifted. He leaned forward slowly, like he wasn't sure I wouldn't change my mind. His hand came to rest lightly on my jaw, warm and hesitant, and then, His lips touched mine. Soft, careful. A question, not a statement. And I answered. I leaned into it, just enough to let him know it was okay, that I wasn't frozen in shock, that I wanted this too. God, I wanted it. The kiss deepened almost imperceptibly, and his hand slid to the side of my neck, fingertips brushing the edge of my hairline. He tasted like cinnamon gum and nerves. I hadn't expected that. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless. He looked dazed. "Shit," he muttered, eyes darting between mine. "That wasn't just in my head, right?" "No," I said, voice a little hoarse. "That was real." Josh laughed, a shaky exhale. "Good. I've been thinking about doing that since, like, I don't even know. A while." "You hide it well," I said, trying to calm the thundering in my chest. "I had to," he admitted. I didn't even know what it was at first. I kept making excuses to sit near you in class, telling myself I just needed help with the material, but then I'd watch you explain something, and your face would do this thing when you got excited, and... He cut himself off, shaking his head. It sounds stupid when I say it out loud. It doesn't, I said quietly. He looked at me again, and something in his expression softened. You're not freaked out? Not even a little. That surprised him. He blinked. Really? I've thought about you too, I said, cheeks burning now. A lot, but you know you. He grinned. What does that mean? You're straight, I said. Josh tilted his head. Yeah, that's what I thought too. He leaned back into the couch, running a hand through his hair. But the past few months, I don't know, man. Something changed. I started noticing stuff. Guys, you. He looked up at me again. You're the only one who made it feel less confusing. I don't get nervous around anyone, but I'd see you and forget how to speak like a functioning human being. I laughed. Could have fooled me. You usually look like you've got it all together. That's part of the act, he said with a small smile. Guess I'm better at faking it than I thought. I studied him, this guy who was always so put together. Right now he looked vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before, like he wasn't performing, like the walls were down. I liked it a lot. I'm glad you came over, I said. Josh looked over at me, his eyes locked on mine again. So am I. We sat in silence for a bit, just existing in this new space between us. It wasn't awkward. It was charged, like we'd started something we couldn't walk back now, and neither of us wanted to. Then he asked, "Can I stay for a while? I don't really want to go back to my place yet." I nodded, trying not to let my voice betray how much I wanted him to. "Yeah," I said. "Stay." He smiled, that lopsided, easy grin I'd seen 100 times before. But this one felt different, like it was just for me. He kicked off his shoes and tucked his legs up under him on the couch. Way too comfortable for someone who had just cracked his whole identity open. And me? I just sat there, stunned in the best way, wondering how the hell I'd ended up on this couch with the one guy I'd told myself not to want. And what would happen next? Josh stayed, not just for a little while. He stayed until the lamplight in my living room began to fade with the rising sun. We didn't study. We didn't even talk that much after a point. We just sat there, side by side, his leg brushing mine now and then, and the space between us closing so naturally, I barely noticed it until he was basically leaning on my shoulder. Somewhere around 2 a.m., he asked, "Is it weird that I don't want to go home?" I shook my head. "Not weird." He looked over at me. "Can I sleep here?" And there it was again, that new softness in him, the careful way he asked, like he was giving me the out. But I didn't want an out. "My bed's more comfortable than the couch," I said, casual like it wasn't the most intimate suggestion I'd made in a long time. Josh blinked once, then nodded. "Okay." He followed me into my room, rubbing the back of his neck, suddenly unsure again. I pulled off my hoodie, grabbed a spare pair of sweats from my drawer, and tossed them to him. "They'll probably be tight on you," I said. "But they're clean." He caught them with a grin. "Tight's not always a bad thing." I didn't respond. Couldn't. My brain short-circuited a little at that one. He stepped into the bathroom to change, and I stood there staring at the wall, trying to pretend I wasn't sweating. When he came back, he was barefoot and had pulled the hoodie over his head, the sleeves pushed up to his forearms. He looked comfortable, like he belonged here, and that did something weird to my chest. I climbed into bed first, scooting over to give him space. He hesitated for just a second, then slid in beside me. It wasn't a big bed, definitely not made for two full-grown college guys, but neither of us complained. He lay on his back at first, arms crossed like he wasn't sure what to do. Then, slowly, he turned on his side to face me. I mirrored him. We just looked at each other. "This is probably the first time I've done something like this without being drunk," Josh said quietly. "First time doing what?" "Letting someone in. Like, really in." I nodded. "Yeah." "You ever been with anyone?" he asked. "Not really," I said. "Couple of things in high school. Nothing that meant anything." He stared at me, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Do you want this to mean something?" That question hit harder than I expected. "Yeah," I said, barely above a whisper. Josh reached out, his fingers grazing mine between us. Just a brush, light and hesitant. But I didn't pull away. He slid his hand into mine fully, intertwining our fingers. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. "This is crazy," he said, more to himself than to me. "Yeah, but it doesn't feel wrong." "No," I agreed. "It really doesn't." The silence between us turned warm, like a blanket, and we lay there, still holding hands, the world outside forgotten. After a long pause, Josh whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing." "That makes two of us." He let out a quiet laugh. "So we figure it out?" I squeezed his hand. "We figure it out." Eventually, I felt him shift closer. His forehead pressed lightly against mine. Not another kiss. Just that. Contact. Closeness. It said more than words could. And with that, his breathing slowed. His grip relaxed. He fell asleep holding my hand. I stayed awake for a while after that, listening to his breath, feeling the weight of his body beside mine. Every few minutes, I'd glance at him, like I still wasn't sure it was real, but it was. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't overthinking what came next. I was just here, with him. Waking up next to Josh the next morning was like walking a tightrope between fantasy and panic. Hadn't moved all night. Not because I was uncomfortable, he'd stayed mostly on his side, but because some part of me was terrified that if I did, I'd wake up for real and find out I'd dreamed the whole thing, but I hadn't. When I opened my eyes, the sun was just beginning to filter through the blinds, soft streaks of light cutting across my room. Josh was still asleep, his face turned toward me, hair messy and slightly damp at the hairline. His hand was still loosely tangled in mine, our fingers relaxed but connected. He looked peaceful and unfairly attractive for someone who'd spent the night crammed into a twin bed. I tried to shift without waking him, but as soon as I moved, his brows twitched and his grip on my hand tightened just slightly. "You awake?" I whispered. He hummed without opening his eyes. "What time is it?" I glanced at the clock. "A little after 8. Josh groaned and buried his face in the pillow. "Too early." I laughed softly. "You can sleep more if you want." "Nah," he mumbled, then turned onto his back, stretching his arms over his head. The hem of the hoodie rode up, exposing a sliver of skin, and I had to force my eyes not to linger. He caught me looking, of course. "You checking me out already?" I rolled my eyes. "You're not that subtle, man." Josh grinned, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Can't help it. You're cute when you're trying to act chill." I looked away, my face instantly heating. So, about last night. Josh's smile faded a bit. Not in a bad way, just like he was switching gears. He sat up slowly, propping himself against the headboard. Yeah, he said. We should probably talk about that, huh? Only if you want to. He nodded. I do. Just don't really know what to say. I sat up too, pulling my knees up to my chest. It doesn't have to be anything huge. I just want to know where your head's at. Josh exhaled through his nose. I'm confused, if I'm honest. I've never done anything like that. With anyone. I nodded slowly. That makes sense. But it didn't feel wrong, he added. It felt good, like, right good. He looked at me again. Is that weird? No, I said. Not at all. I'm not gonna wake up tomorrow and suddenly be some new label, he said. I don't know what this means yet, but I know I liked being with you. That made something in my chest loosen. I'm not asking you to label anything, I said. I'm just asking if you meant it. Josh nodded, slow but sure. I did. We sat in silence for a few moments, the kind that was full, not awkward. The kind where you don't have to rush. Eventually, Josh broke it. So, breakfast? I blinked. You want to stay for breakfast? He raised an eyebrow. You kicking me out already? No, I said too quickly. I just didn't expect, Josh smirked. Dude, I slept over, kissed you, and fell asleep holding your hand. I think I can stick around for toast. He climbed out of bed and padded barefoot into the kitchen like he'd done it 100 times, like it was normal, like we were normal. And I followed him, trying not to let my brain spiral. Because while nothing was official, nothing labeled, and nothing said out loud yet, something had changed. And I couldn't wait to see where it went next. Josh made eggs. Like, actually made them. Not scrambled to mush, dorm-style, ketchup-covered eggs, but soft scrambled, buttery, perfectly seasoned eggs. I stood there at the counter, watching him toss in some chopped scallions like we were suddenly domestic partners who did this every Sunday. You've done this before, I said. He grinned without looking up. I used to cook breakfast for my little sister. My mom worked early shifts. You never mentioned having a sister. You never asked, he said, glancing at me, and that smile, easy, warm, familiar, hit me in a way that made my stomach flutter. He handed me a plate, and we sat at the small table near the window. The morning light caught in his hair, and for a second, I felt dizzy just looking at him. Not because he was hot, though yes, very, but because this felt real, like we'd skipped weeks of awkwardness and landed somewhere safe, and that scared me a little. So, I said, poking at my eggs, what happens now? Josh paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. Now? Yeah, you stayed over, we kissed, you said it meant something. But like, what happens after that? He set his fork down and leaned back in the chair, running a hand through his already messy hair. I don't know, he admitted. That's not me trying to dodge it, I'm just being honest. I nodded slowly. I don't want to mess this up, he said. I don't even know what this is yet, but I know I liked being around you. I felt calmer, like I wasn't pretending. That made me smile. You don't have to have it all figured out right away. Josh tilted his head, studying me. You're okay with that? Yeah, as long as you're not just, like, trying it out for fun. I'm not a test run. His face changed at that. Serious, thoughtful. You're not. A beat of silence passed. I just need time, he said. You've got time, I replied. But be real with me, okay? If this gets too much, or confusing, or whatever, you tell me. Josh nodded. Deal. After breakfast, he lingered like he didn't want to leave. He helped me clean the kitchen, and when I walked him to the door, he hesitated with his hand on the knob. I'll see you in class, he said. You can text me, you know. I said, even if we're not cramming. Josh laughed under his breath. I will. Then, in this weird, quiet moment, he leaned in and kissed my cheek. Just a quick, warm brush of lips against skin, but it left me stunned. And then he was gone. The apartment felt quieter than usual after that. Not empty exactly, but like something had shifted. I didn't even realize I was smiling until I caught my reflection in the microwave. Whatever this was, it had started. But I also knew it wouldn't be smooth. Josh Turner didn't strike me as the type to fall gently. Josh didn't text me that night. Or the next day. We sat 2 rows apart in psych, like always, and he didn't even glance my way. And I know I said I wasn't expecting anything official. I said he had time, but still, that radio silence, that shift from holding my hand in bed to pretending I don't exist in lecture, it hit harder than I expected. By Thursday night, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. The kiss, the sleepover, the look on his face when he asked if he could stay. Maybe it had all just been some identity crisis he'd needed to get out of his system. And I was the convenient test subject. I tried not to let it get to me. I really tried. But by Friday, when he still hadn't so much as texted, I gave up and muted our chat thread. Then, just after midnight, he showed up at my door again. No text, no call, just a knock. I opened it, and there he was. Hoodie pulled up, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. "Hey," he said. I stared at him. "Seriously." "I know," he said, hands in his pockets. I screwed up. "You think?" Josh took a step forward. "Can I come in?" I didn't move. "Why? So you can ignore me again tomorrow?" He winced like I'd slapped him. "I'm sorry." I panicked. I gathered. He looked down at the floor, then back at me. "It wasn't you, it's me." I got in my head. I started thinking about the team, about what people would say. And then I thought, if I just pulled back, it would go away. "And did it?" "No," he said. "It got worse." I finally stepped aside and let him in. He stood in the middle of my apartment like he didn't know what to do with himself. "I haven't stopped thinking about it," he said. "About you. About that night." "Then why'd you ghost me?" "Because I'm scared," he admitted. "Because this you make me feel something I didn't know I was capable of feeling. And it's not just physical. It's not some curiosity thing." He looked at me, desperate now. "I liked waking up next to you. I liked the way you talk about stuff you care about. I liked that you let me stay, even though you were probably nervous as hell. And yeah, I freaked out after. But I didn't forget." I crossed my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. "You made me feel like I meant something. Then you disappeared." Josh closed the distance between us, not touching, just there. His voice dropped. "You do mean something. That's the problem." I didn't know how to handle it. I could see it then. The rawness in his expression. The walls were down again, like they'd been that night in bed. No act, no posturing, just him. "What do you want, Josh?" He exhaled. "I want to try. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I want you in it." I didn't say anything for a long time, just looked at him. This guy who confused the hell out of me, who was still figuring himself out, who had already hurt me once. And still, somehow I wanted to reach for him. Finally, I said, "Okay." His eyes widened. "Okay?" "Try," I said, "but no more disappearing, no more pretending." He nodded quickly, like he'd been holding his breath. "No more." He stepped closer, this time letting his hand brush mine. I didn't pull away. "Can I stay tonight?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. And just like that, the air between us softened again. Not perfect, not easy, but real. This time, when he followed me to my room, I knew exactly what I was letting in. And who. Josh didn't touch me right away. He just sat beside me on the bed like he was afraid to do anything wrong, like being here again meant more this time. And maybe it did. "Is this okay?" he asked. "You're here," I said. "That's all I care about." He exhaled and laid back, folding his arms behind his head, staring up at the ceiling like it held all the answers. "I told my roommate I was going out to clear my head," he said. I think he assumed I meant, like, taking a drive or whatever. Technically not a lie. Josh turned his head toward me, a small smile playing at his lips. I was thinking about you the whole time. Like, the whole time. I swallowed. Why? He shrugged. Because I haven't felt this before. Not like this. It's not just about intimacy or figuring out if I'm into guys or whatever. It's you. You make me feel like I can breathe. That one hit deep. I'm scared, he added, but I'm more scared of not doing this. Of not trying. And with that, he reached for me. Slowly, cautiously. Like I might flinch or say no. But I didn't. I let him pull me closer, our bodies fitting together under the covers like we'd done this 100 times. We didn't rush anything. No tearing off clothes. No heavy breathing. Just his hand in my hair, mine resting against the curve of his chest, our foreheads nearly touching in the quiet. He looked at me for a long moment. Are you waiting for the part where I ruin this again? He asked, voice quiet. No, I said. I'm waiting for the part where we just be. Josh closed his eyes and exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for days. That sounds better. And for a long time, that's all we did. We just were. I didn't expect to fall asleep. Not with his arm around me, his thumb idly tracing circles against my shoulder, his heartbeat steady against my back. But somehow, I did. And when I woke up, the sun was already rising again. Josh was still there, still asleep, hair messed up, breathing slow and even. He looked younger like that, softer. I watched him for a moment, letting it sink in. He stayed. No panic, no silence, no retreat, just Josh. When he finally blinked awake, he looked at me like he was surprised I was real too. Morning, I said. His voice was raspy with sleep. Best one I've had in a long time. He pulled me in tighter, burying his face in my neck for a second. I let it happen. Because for the first time since this started, there was nothing left to question. Josh was here, and he wasn't going anywhere. By Monday, word had started to spread. Nothing dramatic, no grand announcements, just subtle shifts. Josh and I started walking out of class together. He stopped sitting with his teammates and started sitting with me. People noticed. Of course they did. And then there was the moment. The one I hadn't planned for. The one that wasn't supposed to mean much, but ended up meaning everything. We were walking across campus after psych. I said something dumb about our professor's obsession with outdated case studies. Josh laughed, shook his head, and, without thinking, reached over and tucked my hair behind my ear. Right there, in the middle of the quad. No one said anything. No one screamed or pointed. But I saw it. The double take from a girl in a cheer hoodie, the look from one of Josh's teammates across the lawn, the tight smile from a guy I'd seen at a few LGBTQ mixers. And for a second, my heart raced. But then I looked at Josh, and he didn't look back at any of them. He was still looking at me, like I was the only person there. And just like that, the fear faded. That night, he came over again, this time with Thai takeout and a blanket he insisted we had to use because yours smells like detergent and academic stress. We ate on the floor, talked about everything except class. He told me about his sister, about the pressure he'd always felt to be the normal one, the guy's guy, the one who didn't make waves. I told him about my first crush in 8th grade, about how I spent years thinking love would always feel like keeping a secret. Josh didn't flinch, he just listened. And after dinner, when we were curled up on the couch, his hand resting on my thigh, he whispered, "This is the first time I've felt like I could exhale." I rested my head on his shoulder. Same. A few weeks passed, then midterms, then spring break, and we were still us. Not defined by a label, not rushing into anything, just real. Josh wasn't suddenly out. He wasn't putting rainbows in his Instagram bio or holding my hand in front of the whole soccer team. But he didn't hide either. He stayed the night. He introduced me to his sister on FaceTime. He kissed me once before leaving for practice, right at my door in broad daylight. And each time he did, I felt something settle in me. Something that had always felt like it was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now, it just felt like living. The truth is, I don't know where this story ends. We're still figuring it out. But what I do know is this. He came over to study. And yeah, he sucked at econ. But when it came to showing up, when it came to choosing me, he passed that test with flying colors.